Get ready for the world's greatest Arsenal podcast. Welcome to another podcast by Guns and Yellow Ribbons. Enjoy the show.
Hello, good evening. Welcome to another episode of Arsenal's Guns and Yellow Ribbons. This is an Arsenal history podcast. This time we are looking at the era of 1953 to 1986. Terry Neal, Bertie Mee, the first double, and much, much more. I am joined today by old man Trev. We're coordinated in our outfits. He wanted to change, but he's, a bit of a, what he's like. And also our Arsenal historians, Mark and Andy. Love your top. Love your top, Trev.
Listen, don't start about the tops, focus, because I'll go and change. I don't want to be associated with you too much. The podcast is enough. Any more than that, and we're done. Chihuahua will be happy. I want you, Dad will be happy, and I'm going to double advertising tonight.
Gareth, we definitely need some kudos for this. This is some hell of advertising that we're doing for you. So I do want to retweet. I do want to a special mention on Twitter for us. Mark, how are you doing?
You might want to get his name right first.
Yeah, it's Gavin. Yeah.
It's Gavin. Oh, sorry, Gavin. My apologies. That's why it's been charging me double all this time, is it?
Yep.
Most likely, yeah.
Yeah. Listen, names have never been my strong point. Michael, how are you doing?
That's like listening to me mum, because my brother's name's Michael. Whenever I call her, it's, how are you? Andrew told me the other day, I am Andrew. Yeah. Don't. Anyway.
I could go on for hours about mums and getting names wrong.
I do the same thing. With my children, I do the same thing. It's terrible.
I know. I think it's old age and probably alcohol abuse or something like that. Maybe, I don't know. So, listen, guys. This is our fourth incarnation of the Arsenal history. We're looking at 1953 to 1986. It was a bit of a barren spell in some ways for Arsenal. We'd won the league in 1953, which we talked about the last time. We did get to some finals and semi-finals, which we'll talk about, and we didn't win anything until 1971. But the thing I've found and I've loved by doing this with you guys is, as I've said before, I'm a bit of a newbie to Arsenal in in comparison to you other three. I've been supporting Arsenal since the very early 90s. And I think of myself as I'm old in the tooth. I know my history, but I've learned so much and so many interesting things. I didn't realize the things about what happened in the war. I didn't realize about the stuff about Norris and Chapman. And that's been interesting. And this one, I've got a few little gems on here. The first one was Arsenal versus Manchester United, the Busby Babes, Manchester United. We lost to them 5-4, only 5 days before the Munich Air disaster. Regardless of your affiliation of who you support, nobody wants to see any players, people getting wiped out like that. Andy, do you want to open on that one? What's your thoughts on that game and what do you know around that sort of time?
Well, so for the people that I know that went to the game, my dad was one of them. They all say it's probably one of the greatest games of football ever. It was backwards and forwards. Manchester United were like the best team in the country by far at that time. And we were having a bit of a rough patch. I think we'd been knocked out of the FA Cup earlier in the season by Northampton. And unusually, the editorial in the Arsenal programme ripped into the players. So, things were not going too well. But in this game, we gave them, gave as good as we got. And, coming out of it with a 5-4 defeat was quite a good game, or good result for us at the end of the day.
It's especially when we're losing 3-0 at half time.
Yeah, exactly. But it was just one of them things that the players got together and they came back and made a real good game of it in the second half. And people talk about the great Manchester United team that was sadly decimated a few days later. The likes of Duncan Edwards, and Mark Jones and Tommy Taylor. They all lost them. And the rest of the team was so badly injured that they struggled for the rest of the season. Manchester United, they'd reached the FA Cup final, but they were allowed to sign players that had already played in the FA Cup. So they were allowed to sign cup-tied players to replace the players that they'd lost that season. So, everyone was looking out for them. But with regards to Arsenal, we were in a bit of a tight spot at the time. We'd lost Tom Whittaker the year before. And he died in post, sadly. Like his mentor, Herbert Chapman. But he just put too much into the club. He suffered from ill health for the last year, 18 months of his time there. And Jack Crayston, his assistant, was in charge of the team for quite a long time before he was actually made permanent manager. And that was in 57, 58.
And Andy, that's about that season when we played Man United. It's unfortunately about the only memorable thing for the Arsenal from that season, isn't it? There weren't a lot else that we want to think about, and it was really. It's so sad because that Man United team weren't only a very good side; they were a young side, weren't they? They were a very young side that were going to get better, and it's so sad.
I think they'd won the league the previous season and went on to win it that season, even though they lost all them players at that time. So I might have to have a look. I know that they won the league a couple of times on the trot, and they were doing well in Europe as well, which was, quite a thing because at that time, air flight, flying around Europe was quite a drag.
Yeah. No, in 58 they finished ninth, mate. In the following year, in 59, in 58 they finished ninth, and in 59 they finished second, mate.
All right. Yeah. So it must have been the 2 years before that they won the league.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
Mark, your thoughts? Go on, go, Mark.
Yeah, and that's right. The 2 years before that, they'd won the league.
And then, as Trevor alluded, not much happened until 1966. England won the World Cup in 1966, and Bertie Mee was appointed as an Arsenal manager in 1966. He joined Arsenal in 1960. As a physiotherapist and succeeded Billy Milne. Is that how I pronounce it?
Oh, sorry, as a physio, Billy Milne. And Milne had been there for years as well. He'd been there since he'd been there since the end of the First World War.
Mm. And so he led us to our. He led us to our. You know what? I've actually got my notes here, and I've highlighted, and I can't even read underneath. But he did lead us to subsequent cup finals, and in 68? I know we don't want to particularly go into some of the negative stuff, but it's still history. It was a 68 against. What was 68 against? Come on, Leeds.
Yeah,
Dirty Leeds
cup final.
Dirty Leeds. Jack Charlton trod on someone's foot before the goal. The goalie, wasn't it? I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
and then the Swindon mud bath, wasn't it? Because they had the horse show.
Well, apparently they didn't.
Someone didn't they?
Mentioned that a little while ago that it wasn't the Horse of the Year show that was on there. Yeah.
Really?
It's been something.
It must have been something. Obviously, the pitch was in an awful state, and Arsenal players were suffering from flu.
And in the following year, we saw. Sorry. Go ahead. I missed that one. Sorry.
So they had Don Rogers who won the game for them, Swindon. So that was, in 1969. So that's what went.
On more positives, the next season saw a breakthrough for Arsenal. First competitive European trophy in 1968-69 in the Intercities Fairs Cup. Now, enlighten me, Mark, about the Fairs Cup. What would it be the equivalent to in today's? I know it's one of our
it's the forerunner of the UEFA Cup, so that'd be Europa League effectively.
Europa League. Okay.
Yeah.
What you got to remember, Fergus, is that in those days, mate, only one team went into the Champions League. Yes, it weren't 4 or 5 teams from each country like now. Your champions from each country went in the Champions League, and it was a straight knockout. and the runners-up or the third-place team or the FA Cup team, these boys will know, went into the Fairs Cup, which became the UEFA Cup, which became like the Europa League. But it's a hard comparison to make to nowadays because, as I say, in those days, only the champions from each country played in the top European competition, not the 4 or 5 you get now, mate.
Okay. Yeah, I do remember in my youth watching like the likes of the Cup Winners' Cup and the European Cup, and not in the format they're in now, and now being even watered down even more with Europa Conference League and so on. We're talking about this game. We were losing the first leg, Andy, trailing Anderlecht 3-0 in the Fairs Cup final. We threw ourselves a lifeline with Ray Kennedy's late away goal. Do you want to talk us through your memories of this game, this goal? And I expect you were only a young lad around then as well.
Personally, I don't remember too much about it. I was only 2 years old at the time. So we had a good run, a fairly easy run to start off with. We played some easy teams and gave them a couple of them we beat quite heavily. And then in the semi-finals, we played Ajax, who were a team sort of like, a few years later, they won the European Cup 3 years on the trot, and they had the likes of Cruyff in there. So beating them in the semi-final it showed how good we actually were. Yeah. Going to the final was played in 2 legs, over 2 legs, unlike it is nowadays. The first leg was away in Belgium. And Anderlecht were a very, very good team at the time, and they went 3-0 up. And imagine there was probably quite a few Arsenal fans that actually went over there at the time. They were probably thinking at the time, well, that's it. But Bertie Mee made an inspired substitution, brought Ray Kennedy on quite late in the game, and he scored a goal quite late, and that gave us something to go for, because obviously we now got an away goal. And like many years later, we needed a 2-0 win to win the trophy. So we came back to Highbury, and as much as people have said the Man United game in 57-58 was the greatest game they've seen, people that went to the second leg of the Fairs Cup final say it was the greatest atmosphere ever at an Arsenal game. So, you've got pushing 60,000 Arsenal fans in Highbury. And we scored a goal that then means that we've only got to score another goal. And we managed to get a second goal. And then just to seal it, we came back and we scored yet another goal, 3-0. So we win 4-3 on aggregate, 4-3 over the 2 legs. And then the crowd erupted. And, I don't know if you've seen photographs after the game, but the pitch is just a mass of fans. Players are trying to get off the pitch. They're being hoisted up in the air, shirts ripped off their backs.
Do you know what, Fergus? What the boys are talking about here is quite. I'm really sad about it, right? Because not in the first instance, that 3-0 win at home spawned the great song, didn't it? And Kelly and Radford and Samuels made sure that the Fairs Cup was won. And I didn't go to my first game till the following season. I went to my first game in December 1970. So I can't remember anything about that Anderlecht win, and it's one of my greatest regrets. I know you shouldn't wish your life away. It's one of my greatest regrets that I can't remember what the game that people told me was the greatest they ever saw at Highbury, when I'm so close to seeing it, so close to seeing it. My memories, and yet I can remember vividly the 71 Cup final, vividly. I've got every memory of it, so it's strange. So, Mark, when's your first memory? When does your memory really kick in solidly about the Arsenal, mate? And then, Andy, you can answer the same question after.
Well, in 1970, I was in Australia, living in Australia, and we'd come back sort of October-ish. My first memory is actually the FA Cup final, to be honest.
71?
Yeah.
How old are you then, mate, if you don't mind me asking? 20 what?
Well, then I was 6 in 1970.
Yeah, so you're a couple of years younger than me, yeah. Although I look better for it, I must say. But so, yeah.
So I don't remember. I was living. I was young and in Australia, so I didn't have any. My dad supported Arsenal, like Andy's. So it literally was, and like you, I can remember a hell of a lot about the '71 Cup final, even though I was 7 then. But I just, you just remember things, don't you?
Yeah, I just can't remember 70. I wish I could. What about you, Andy? When's your memory really kick in solidly about your experiences at Arsenal?
Just going back, the first one that I can remember is the '71 Cup final, but I don't remember anything about the game. I can remember being at home and my brother and my dad were watching it, and I was coming up for 4 years old, and I wasn't really that interested in it, and they were telling me constantly to get out of the way of the television.
Yeah,
but I'm pretty certain that my brother and my sister took me down to see the parade the following day.
Yeah.
What they were doing, taking their 3-year-old brother down there, I just don't know, because it was packed. And but the first time that I can remember, sort of like for everything, was 75, 76 when I started going. So something happened in the summer of 75. I remember bits about 74, 75, losing to West Ham in an FA Cup game and writing about it at school. But it was 75, 76 when my brother started taking me regularly. And I can remember so much about that season. Yeah. Standing on the terraces with him.
Yeah.
Before we jump ahead to post 71, Bertie Mee won the double in 71, the FA Cup and the First Division. A huge feat. It was his most best accolade, and you had Champagne, Charlie George, and doing a Ramsey, as I like to call it in the modern day. No, there's the other way around, boys. Don't worry. Let's talk about that game. Like we played Liverpool in the final. It was the 8th of May. It was a balmy bank holiday weekend, I believe, at Wembley, the old Wembley. And Trevor's ticket, he still got it.
That's not my ticket. That's one I bought, Fergus. I must stress that I do collect tickets and programs, mate. And I don't want to claim that was my ticket in the game I went to, because that's very naughty people that do that. And so I must say that's the ticket I bought to add to my collection. Yeah.
I know I could pass it off as your ticket, Trev, but I am just doing it as a little bit of a wind-up, you know that. Let's talk about the game. Let's talk about the double-winning side. Let's talk about Charlie George. Let's talk about George Graham. Let's talk about some of the superstars there. Mark, who stood out for you in that performance, in that double-winning season? And what games stand out that you can recall from your research?
Well, I mean, there's quite a lot in there, really. I mean, I
don't know. I was only born in 71.
I think, to be honest, I think the game that probably spurred them on the most was getting stuffed by Stoke 5-0 near the start of the season. Because they all say the same thing. They all said, "Well, it was a bit of a shock to the system. We went there expecting to win because we were riding high even then, and they just got absolutely mullered. There was no rhyme or reason for it. It was just a really, really bad day at the office." And after that, it knuckled down.
Do you know, Mark? I hadn't been to my first game then, but my Uncle Pat kept promising me he was going to take me.
Yeah.
But I can remember my granddad saying to me that day. I can remember it vividly. I don't know why you remember these little things from like nearly 50 years ago now. But my granddad said to me, God rest him, he said, "You lost 5-0, son, and you want to go and watch the Arsenal." He was a Tottenham fan. He said, "You lost 5-0 and you want to go and watch the Arsenal." He said, "Bob Wilson won't play again this season. He's done his back in. Keep picking the ball up out of the net." Why do you remember these things, lads? Why is that stuck in, and everything else disappears out, Yeah. It's strange, yeah.
I tell you, if you can go on YouTube and find that game and see Stoke's 5 goals, they were absolute crackers, all 5 of them. You watch it and think, wow, they deserved to win that 5-0. Because of the goals that they scored.
That was the thing. They did deserve to win by a big margin, didn't they? It wasn't just like a fluke. It was like they absolutely stuck. We were given the right stuff in.
Yeah. And then, sorry, Fergus, but we're getting into my era, mate. And I'm really honest, right? It's making the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end thinking about these early days of being an Arsenal fan. So I'm sorry if I've cut you off, mate. But just before we talk about the final, on December the 12th, I finally got round to going to watch. My uncle took me, right? He got us 2 seats, unreserved seats in the West Lower. I've still got the 2 tickets and the programme from that game, my first game. And I can still, there's another thing I can remember vividly, and with everyone's done it. I've watched my kids do it when I've taken them. You go into that stadium as a young kid and you don't know what you're expecting, and your jaw hits the floor, doesn't it? Because it's this carpet of green and all these people in this immaculate place we called Highbury, and it just makes me, it sends a shiver down my spine, the greatness of it. And I'll 10 more seconds, Fergus, because I like to quote the great Bobby Robson here, Sir Bobby Robson, the ex-England manager, because he said a thing, didn't he, about when you're a kid, you grow up and you get taken to your first ever game, and you walk up the stairs and you see that patch of green for the first time, and without realising it and without being able to help it, you fall in love with your club, don't you? You fall in love and you're stuck with it. And real fans are stuck with that for the rest of their days, and that sums me up perfectly. What a wonderful year it was.
Here you go. I've got it for people watching the video. There's the first goal by Stoke, and it was a well-worked goal. There, this is the game, is it? I haven't found the wrong one, boys, have I? I don't think Stoke have beaten us 5-0 many times.
No, they haven't.
Oh, I don't want to watch that, Phil. We shouldn't say that off now.
That's fine. That it can come off now anyway. So I was just demonstrating that we could do it for you. So
I mean, the other thing I actually remember from what I mean, actually saying about the FA Cup is I do actually remember when we did lose to Leeds, didn't we? 1-0. Was it 1-0?
Yeah.
And they had a really dodgy offside. They had a dodgy offside goal, and then the same thing happened to them to West Brom, didn't it?
That's right. Yeah.
There was a load of, and I was thinking, what's going on here? I'm not very old. I was thinking, what's going on here? All these goals are offside. But it was just amazing that we caught them up, really, because they were a really good, really top team.
And that team that won the double in 71. How long were they in the making? And they come close in 68, 69. Who were the top most outstanding players that you could say in there? Obviously, Charlie George, everyone talks about, and he's still with the club now. And do you want to come back to us on that one?
I mean, really, it was a team. It wasn't. Charlie George was the idol of the North Bank, but the rest of them were such a unit. And you saw that towards the end of the season where they had to go out and they had so many games to play because they've got the FA Cup that they're concentrating on as well. And they had a few replays in there, and they're still in the Fairs Cup as well. So they've got European games to fit in. Yeah. And they're sort of like there was a very small squad as well. I think we used about 16 players, and only a couple of them only played a handful of games. So it was the same team playing week in, week out. And they're going out and they've got to win a game, and they'll go out and they'll win 1-0. The amount of 1-0 and 2-1s, games that were very close towards the end of the season is incredible. They did what they had to do. It's very much like the 1991 season for those that are a bit younger and can remember that. Frank McClintock was obviously the one that probably held it all together on the pitch as the captain. Yeah. And if you go to any event where Frank McClintock is there with any of his teammates from that time, they always refer to him as my captain. Frank is the man. Yeah. But the rest of the players, they were all in the right place at the right time. Pat Rice had only just come in at the beginning of the season to take over. I think he took over at right back from Peter Storey. I think Storey started the season at right back. And there was a few little things that happened at the beginning of the season. Charlie George broke his ankle in the first game of the season, which didn't help. And that brought in Ray Kennedy. And Ray Kennedy ended up being top scorer. Him and Radford had a great partnership together up front. And then Storey had moved into midfield as the enforcer. And they all seemed to, very early on in the season, a couple of little things happened and they all just clicked into place. And as Mark said, Leeds were a great team at the time and they were always up there and we were, perhaps a point behind them or level with them. It was neck and neck with us and them all the way. So you've got that pressure of this competing with this great Leeds team, and then all these other games coming on at the end of the season. The semi-final against Stoke, we drew that the first game. We were 2-0 down. So we're 2-0
down. Saved us.
Yeah, we got 2-1 down in the last minute, and we get a penalty. And so, can you imagine having to take that penalty? This could be the season, the shot that could make or break the season, especially as we were still behind Leeds in the league. And, ice cold Peter Storey against Gordon Banks, the greatest goalkeeper in the world, sent in the wrong way. Brilliant. And that, again, was probably another game that said to them, where Bertie Mee and Don Howe said to them, look, this is our season. Mm-hmm. And so it's saying Don Howe was probably one of the great parts of the team as well. He was a fantastic coach.
Yeah, he was indeed. Mark,
are you going to say something?
Mark, do you want to talk about this 71 season before I butt in again with our mate Fergus and say a couple of things? Because season.
Looking at it, as Andy said, there was a few changes, but one of the big changes always, and I didn't realise it. Obviously, didn't remember it at the time. When you look at it, the first 18 or 19 games, I think Roberts played at centre half because Simpson was injured, and then basically Simpson came back, and that was it. He played all the games from that. But it was just, as Andy said, it was just a team. One player was playing well, and Roberts wasn't a bad player, but Simpson was a much better player. Should have played for England. He just fitted straight in, and that was it. It was just like it was seamless. There was no changes, no here, none of that. And I say Roberts couldn't get back in because Simpson was playing so well. But the team, it was, as you say, it was a team effort. It wasn't a superstar scenario. It wasn't a superstar scenario. They were just a great team.
Fergus,
that double win.
Fergus, it was a really interesting question you asked about who was a superstar, and it deserves a little more time because if we're honest, Charlie George became a superstar because he scored the goal in the final that won it against Liverpool, but there weren't any stars. And I'm doing this off the top of my head, but if you think about the international caps won by all the players in that 70-71 team, none of them got many. I think apart from probably Rice, who went on as an older player to get a bucket load for Ireland. Mm-hmm. None of them were in double figures, I don't think, for international caps. There were no superstars. I mean, even Charlie George only got one cap for England because he told Don Revie where to stick his international call-ups. So that was key to it, mate. There were no stars, I think. They were a team and they were a bunch of players. And it's also worth remembering as well, Fergus, that I'm looking at the boys' book here. That's it. You didn't play no reserve teams in the League Cup and the early rounds of the Fairs Cup in them days. Your first team played every week. We played 64 games that season, Fergus, and a good few of the players played in every single game. Armstrong played in every game. The great George Armstrong, one of the most unlucky players never to get an England cap. Mm-hmm. Fine man and a gentleman as well. I never met him, but having heard all about him, you just know he was a gentleman,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so that was the key to it, I believe. There weren't any superstars, Fergus. It was just a team of good players that gelled together and played with each other as a team.
Yeah.
And fingers crossed.
If you get a chance, there's a book called 71 Guns by David Tossell.
I've got it, yeah.
One of the best books about the Arsenal ever. He's interviewed all the players and he goes through the whole season and they describe certain things to him. And they were taking painkilling injections because they didn't want to miss a game.
Yeah, exactly.
They were hiding injuries from Bertie Mee and Don Howe because they didn't want to miss a game.
Yeah.
And but the whole of the book is one that you'll just read and read and read. It's you can't put it down.
Yeah, it's a cracking. I'll read it to Fergus if you want to look at it, mate. It's a bit difficult to get hold of nowadays, I think, isn't it, boys?
I should imagine it's fairly easy on eBay. I should admit.
All right, then I thought it had been too long before you put me in my place. So.
Doesn't take much. That double winning side was broken up quite soon, and for the rest of the decade, we didn't really achieve a huge amount. We were runners up in 72 of the FA Cup, runners up in 73 season. Sorry?
We were unlucky in 72. Our great goalkeeper got injured. Bob Wilson got injured. And a lad called Jeff Barnett, who died earlier this year, Fergus, a goalkeeper called Jeff Barnett, who I used to see play a lot for the Arsenal, because in them days, not only did you go to the first team games at Highbury, when the first team were away every other Saturday, the reserves played all their own games at Highbury. And as a youngster, it was a pleasure going to the reserve games because there weren't much of a crowd. You could get close to the players, and it was nice. You were comfortable as a kid, you know. And I used to watch Jeff Barnett play football, play for Arsenal reserves a lot. And Bob Wilson got injured, and Jeff Barnett played in the final. Didn't have a chance with a goal, I don't think. But it was like they always show that clip, don't they? Because it was a dive. He sort of had his legs open and his arms open when Jeff Barnett dived and for the ball, but it went past him, and we lost the final to the dirtiest Leeds team that ever set foot on this planet. 1-0. And they were dirty. They were hard.
They were dirty. Yeah, they were.
72 Leeds team, excuse me. Or Fergus. If they played one half of football as a team now, in this current climate of football, they wouldn't have 4 or 5 players left on the field, mate. Honestly, Fergus. Am I right, boys? Am I right, Mark?
You're right.
Oh,
Yeah.
100%, mate. Giles, Bremner, you know, I mean, you know, Hunter, Charlton.
Charlton, yeah.
Was it Norman Hunter that got knocked out by little Franny Lee? Little Franny Lee, about 2 foot shorter than him, give him a big right and knocked him out.
And then Billy Bremner and Kevin Keegan got sent off in the Charity Shield for fighting, didn't they? Trading Yeah. Sorry, Fergus. Carry on, my friend.
It's just a completely different era of football, but you can't say it against Jack Charlton for me. I'm Irish, so put under pressure, man. Again, first division runners-up in 72, 73, and in 76, the year that you come into when you were talking about you started going, Mark, Terry Neal succeeded me. At age 34, he became the youngest manager to date. Obviously, I think has Arteta superseded him or not?
Sorry, no.
Okay, this is why we do this.
Leslie Knighton in 1919 was younger than Terry Neal, as was Phil Kelso, who was the manager who got Arsenal promoted in 1904.
Okay.
Don't trust Wikipedia.
And he was the hardest manager we ever had.
You what, mate?
Which one? Knighton or
Kelso? He didn't take any nonsense from anyone. He was brilliant.
Listen,
got arrested at the game.
Don't trust Wiki. I've got to get some of the talking points from somewhere. So, and you can correct me all you like, because you guys know more. So he wasn't the youngest manager, but he was only 34, which was quite young to be a manager then. He signed new players like Malcolm McDonald. I think that's the man that Trevor's spoken to me before about, the guy with the bandy legs, is it? Or am I getting the wrong?
He had the bandiest legs you've ever seen in your life, but he was quick. Do you remember him on Superstars, boys? Like all the sprint races, he used to be as quick as you like. He was Malcolm McDonald, but he had these big bandy legs. Yeah.
Former Tottenham keeper who had played 472 appearances down the road, Pat Jennings, and a crop of talent like Liam Brady, a superhero in green and in red and white, one of the first players to make it overseas, and Frank Stapleton, who left us to be a Judas and go to Man United, my brother's side. So talk a little bit about those.
Let's not forget the other fantastic Irish player, David O'Leary.
Absolutely, O'Leary, yes.
Came into the first team as a 17-year-old at the beginning of the 75, 76 season and put the other first teamers to shame. It was fantastic.
And we're still playing in 89.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And scored a winning penalty against Romania for Ireland in the World Cup quarter-final. Oh, I went through a ceiling that day.
Really? I never knew that, Fergus, for some reason.
It's the only penalty he ever scored for Ireland, because Jack Charlton wouldn't play him. He didn't play him throughout the tournament. And for some, I can't remember the reason, but for some untold reason, he was playing. We got the penalties, and he stood up and took the final penalty, and the rest is history. You
didn't get on with Charlton, did he, for some reason?
No. I think it was just a clash of personalities. And actually, we could expand a little bit on O'Leary a little bit, because if you look at his management career, he went to Leeds, got loads of money at Leeds, and did reasonably well. Got them, was it the semi-finals at the Champions League?
Mm-hmm.
And then went on to Aston Villa. And I don't want to speak ill of him, but it would seem that he put people's noses out of joint or got above his station in some way or another. And he's now just disappeared into the background. And there has been talks about him being linked back into people wanting him back in the boardroom, the current Arsenal setup. Mark, what would your thoughts on that be? And then I'll go to you, Andy.
I honestly don't know. I mean, he was a great player. I used to love watching him. And as Trevor said, I mean, he was there till '93, so he was there a long. His last game was the FA Cup final that we won in '93. You don't know what goes on behind the scenes, do you? Because we're not there. I'd quite like to see him as a figurehead, who didn't do a great deal, but was a figurehead. I really liked him, but you just don't know what's best do you, in that type of thing? Because you really don't know how they get.
We don't.
We see them as players, but we don't see them as beings off there, do we?
Exactly right.
I can give you a little anecdote afterwards, but Andy, your thoughts on O'Leary and how it's panned out?
He does seem to be quite in with the Arsenal board at the moment. You see him quite a lot at games. Even I think during the pandemic, he was at one of the games. But there's obviously something happening there. But I love him anyway. Because he was like one of my first heroes. He was he'd come in as a young player when I first started going. But also a few years ago when the 89 film was released that covered the 1988-89 season, I was lucky enough to go to a Q&A session with a number of the players with some other bloggers. It was Gav from She War that asked me if I could go along and represent his blog.
Gareth or Gavin? I just want to clarify which one. Gavin, definitely.
He's Gav.
Yeah.
And one of the players was David O'Leary. So there was sort of like half a dozen of us there, and we all get to ask a question or two. And just listening to him speak, I could have listened to him for hours and hours. He talks so well, and he's got such a fantastic, soothing Irish accent. It was like he was, stroking the back of your head. That's what his accent was doing to you, and you think, I could listen to this all. And he was very honest about everything as well. So I'd be happy to see him involved in the Arsenal. He's done everything else within the game. So you think he's quite an intelligent bloke. You can tell, he's an intelligent fella. So I think he'd be good for the Arsenal.
I was fortunate enough. I used to sell cars many years ago, and I was a sales manager in a car dealership when his mother and father-in-law came in. And I was in Enfield area, and they bought this car and said, "Oh yeah." So what's your football team? I said, "Well, I'm an Arsenal fan." I said, "My son's really big into Arsenal and the family and everything else." "Oh right, yeah." I said, "Oh, well, you won't believe it." He said, "My daughter is married to David O'Leary." I said, "You're joking." He said, "Yeah." I said, "Oh, the story how they met. She liked horse riding, and they had some contacts with the physio team or something like that in Arsenal, and she had injured herself when she was 18, 20 years of age and come off a horse. And because they knew the contacts at Arsenal, said, "I'll bring her down and we'll get her seen to and everything else." O'Leary was injured, and he had just come out of the treatment room. As he came out of the treatment room, he bumped into her, and the rest is history. So yeah, it's a tiny little claim to fame. But yeah, I was expecting Trevor to jump in with the Irish accent thing, saying that I don't probably have one anymore or something like that. And but we let him move on. We done. But
I was trying to stay awake, Fergus, to be honest, because in fairness, O'Leary does have one of them voices, doesn't he, that sort of puts you in straight away. And from my perspective, he upset a few Arsenal fans, but he's a massive servant of our club. On the field, he never let us down in one game, did he? He played over 500 games, was it, boys? Well over
700 in total.
700 games?
Yeah.
In all competitions,
700 games in all competitions. Man never let us down. Man and boy never chased the money, never chased the big move, never moved away. Nothing but respect from me, David O'Leary, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
Hence why I wouldn't have an issue with him being involved in the club at this current moment in time. Listen, we're up to 1978. It's come up to Christmas. It's a couple of days before Christmas. And, you know, everybody's thinking, what do they want for Christmas? All we want for Christmas is to beat Tottenham 5-0. Sunderland on the first minute, the 38th and 82nd minute, and then Stapleton and Brady chuck a couple in. Boys, you'll remember this game. I'm a young slip of a lad in Ireland. Some of you may have been at it. Talk to me about this game, please. Trevor, you go first on this one.
Well, you see, the story because I was born and raised in Tottenham, as you well know, Fergus, and the story about this win, the story about this 5-0 win begins 2 seasons earlier in 1977, when me as a 15-year-old, I'm attending Northumberland Park School, which is right behind the Tottenham ground. So I used to have to get the bus up Tottenham High Road and get off and walk up Paxton Road every day to school. And I used to get in trouble all the time. Even the teachers hated me because I was an Arsenal fan. And then in 1977, I had the greatest year of my life attending Northumberland Park School. Tottenham get relegated.
Yeah, magic.
Relegated. And so I'm in the element. I'm getting beaten up every other day by pupils and teachers because I'm in Tottenham laughing at them all. But I don't care. I'm relishing every minute. And then so they go down for a season, then they come back up and they're giving it Billy Big Balls because they've come back up and they've beaten a few nothing teams in the second division as it was at the time, and they've come back up. And then we do them 5-0 in their first game, but in their first season back up, and it's manic at Tottenham, and Arsenal fans are everywhere, and they're behind the Park Lane, and it was just wonderful. And to this day, we won 5-0 at the Lane, and we won the league at White Hart Lane twice, but 71. And it's just a massive, great memory. The actual game itself, I can't remember a lot of, but in them days, you see, Fergus, the games are difficult to remember from being there because you're in a crowd of the terraces, you're like that, and you're swaying, and the 6'6" bloke always comes and stands in front of you, and you're getting stuff chucked at you by the opposition fans. So, you try and take, and you can't walk because some coppers nicked the laces out your Dr. Martens before you went in the ground, so you sort of, you remember the day, but the actual game of football itself, but I will never, ever forget Liam Brady's wonderful goal, never forget in a million years that wonderful goal that topped it off. Yeah. Oh, my word. I'll have to hand over the points for that.
I did have the video lined up, but I won't. Guys, Andy, I said to you before we came and just running through what we're going to talk about when we came to this point, and I said on my notes that I had made that it was Terry Neal's greatest performance as a manager in his 7 years, and you said no. Talk about that game and the game that you think was his greatest performance, please.
Well, it's hard to say. That my memory's fading a bit now from all the games. But possibly the 7-0 win against Leeds in the League Cup, and mainly for me because I went to school and I think there were 2 or 3 Leeds fans in my class. I went to Holloway School; it's full of Arsenal fans, and my class had 2 or 3 Leeds fans in there. And I used to live less than a mile from the ground, and on a good day you could hear that if the crowd was big enough, you could hear it cheering. I didn't go to that game, But I can remember the back door being open and kept hearing what I thought was the crowd cheering. And it kept happening. And I'm thinking, well, it can't be. It must be something else. This is like about 5 or 6 now. And then another one. And then it came on the news that we won 7-0. But reading reports about it, Alan Sunderland, he scored another hat-trick. And apparently, that was the best game that he'd ever played at Arsenal. But to win 7-0 and then go to school the following day, and I've got these 3 Leeds fans, he didn't have to say anything to them.
That's bragging rights. That's bragging rights.
Folks, risk being put right again by the boys. But for me, in those days, the League Cup meant something. The League Cup was a proper competition.
Yes, it did. Yeah,
you didn't play no reserve players in the League Cup. You wanted to win it, and we struggled to win it ever since, really, haven't we? But.
Question for you then, Trev. And the other guys, we wanted to win it because we had been pretty abject for 20, 30 years and winning, a double, yes, and then been there or thereabouts. So winning something, we never really achieving very much in Europe. Was that why the League Cup was so important? And in modern time, hang on 1 second. In modern time, has it been devalued because of the likes of the Champions League, Europa League, etc., etc.? Who wants to come back at me?
The thing with the League Cup was all the clubs wanted to win it. You look at Liverpool's record in it in that period. It's like Man City now. They used to win the league and the League Cup. They weren't very good in the FA Cup for some reason, but Liverpool were brilliant in the League Cup as well. Everyone wanted to win it. I don't know when it changed, but all of a sudden it was like, League Cup's not worth winning, wasn't it? It was sort of just overnight almost. It's like, League Cup, oh well.
Was that Fergie and Wenger and that era of managers and Premier League?
I think it was more the Premier League because the money was making sure that you stayed in the Premier League. And I think Wolves did it a few years ago and I don't think it was the League Cup. It might have been the FA Cup, but they fielded a weakened team.
Oxford,
in the FA Cup because they knew they got Man United coming up the following week, and they'd much rather put in a good performance against Man United and maybe get a draw than stay in the FA Cup, because you win the FA Cup, you win not a lot, and you go in now the Europa League, whereas you stay in the Premier League and you're guaranteed, £50 million next season anyway, whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I think it's probably more the Premier League that started to devalue the League Cup rather than the European competitions.
Okay. Yeah, I was just interested because, as you said, people wanted to compete in it. We look 78. We got to an FA Cup final. It's one that we didn't win. It was against Ipswich. We lost 1-0. The only reason I'm bringing this up is because this was for his 50th. He was at that one. No, it was Trevor's first FA Cup final. Trevor, talk to us about what it was like going to Wembley. Talk to us as what would you have been, about 10 years of age?
Fergus, you're on a fine line today.
Don't worry. I've always been on a fine line with you.
My son. 78 was my first cup final, and it was possibly the worst performance I have ever seen from an Arsenal side at Wembley against Ipswich Town. We were awful. Absolutely awful. We hadn't had many replays to play, so we hadn't overly played the amount of games to make us tired, which was probably an excuse in 79 and 80. But 78, Arsenal just didn't turn up. It was awful. It was the worst performance I've ever seen, I think, at Wembley. I don't know if
the worse than 2011.
Yeah, it was, mate. It was just we lost 1-0 and we just didn't look like we were ever in the game, Mark.
I remember it was absolutely shocking. I mean, you're right, actually, because you think, we're about to beat Ipswich, blah blah blah, and Ipswich played us off the park, didn't they? Yeah, and Ipswich was struggling against relegation, and we'd finished up in the top half a dozen, and you'd think we're going to win this game and we're going to win it comfortably, but not. I didn't think from the first minute. Well, that's a bit of an exaggeration, but take it in the context it said. I didn't think for the first few minutes we could win that game. We just didn't seem on the park. No.
After the game, a lot of the players said that they were carrying injuries, didn't they? So McDonald, I think, was injured. Brady was, and Ricks. So that didn't help when you got your three of your best players that are carrying injuries.
And also, obviously, the other thing was that Paul Mariner, who sadly died last week. He played for Ipswich and then he joined up a couple of years later. He played for Ipswich in the FA Cup final. So he was on the winning team that year. But you can't deny Ipswich weren't a better team, because they were far, far better than us in that game.
Yeah.
They were terrible.
Yeah.
Good shout out on the Paul Mariner thing. Respect to him and his condolences to his family. It came up there just briefly for a second.
Stapleton out on the right.
Here we go. The 1979 FA Cup final. People say it is a classic. It was a 3-2 victory against Manchester United. I've watched it and I can watch it like I'm watching the game in modern day. It's played with a lot more brute and force and everything else, but just winning and beating Man United for me is just the most amazing thing in the world. Boys, we'll just sit here for a second, watch a little bit of this, and then we can talk about the game. So we're 2-0 up.
Just watch this. Watch this third goal, Sunderland's goal. It's in the last minute of the game, Fergus. Watch the energy shown by. Is it Brady? The energy shown in the 90th minute of the game at Wembley to put the ball out to Rich for the cross.
Everybody was waiting upfield, and they still are for United.
This was terrible when it went in, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Oh.
It's now 2-2 to Man United for people on SoundCloud. You need to get onto YouTube and watch this. This is a great bit of footage. And if we get done for copyright, I apologise, but we don't do this for profit.
Watch Brady here. Watch Brady. Look at that energy. That's the 94th minute of the game.
Look at that ball. Perfect. And this one's even better.
Yeah. Oh, my word. And you know what, boys? I didn't still see the goal. I didn't see the goal because I still had my head in my hands from their bloody equaliser.
Possibly, but only after a heart-stopping moment when Manchester United came back quite unexpectedly.
Can't take much
there we
more,
go.
Fergus.
The thing is,
Boys,
though, the game wasn't much good, was it, really, except for the last 5 minutes?
Well, it was boring because we were walking it 2-0, so it was like,
exactly.
You know, where we going for a beer after, boys? It's all over, you know.
And then all of a sudden, we weren't.
Oh.
And then we were again.
Do you recall through the beginning of lockdown when there was no football that some of the TV channels were showing some old games? ITV and Sky and BT were all showing old games, and that is one of the ones I actually watched the full 90 minutes. And I do agree with you, Mark. I was thinking, oh Christ, I'm really desperate to watch a bit of football. And about 80 minutes in, I'm thinking, I'm just giving up. But I knew the result and how it went. And I knew the thing with my brothers being Man United fans. And I watched the last 10, 15 minutes of pure exhilarating football. It was fantastic. Boys, where were you? What do you remember of it? Mark, you go first, since you were just saying how boring it was up until then.
I was at the old man's watching it with him. That was it. Couldn't believe it when their second goal went in. It was just like everything drained from you, didn't it? It's like, oh, I can't believe this.
Andy,
I was probably the same. I was nearly 12, and I was at home, and after the disappointment of the previous year, to watch us go 2-0 up and sitting there and waiting for the clock to tick on, and then all of a sudden Man United scored, and then they scored. And it's like, what? Not again! You can't do this to me again. And then Brady, Ricks, and Sunderland combining perfectly, and it's a perfect ending. And I can remember running around in the living room, giving it all, yes. And no doubt afterwards, I went outside and played this game again with my mates, and we all
playing a game at Wembley.
Yeah,
playing a game at Wembley and playing with like jumpers for goalposts. I do remember that as a kid, and kicking the ball against the wall and stuff like that. So memories that we do have in common. 1980, we lost the FA Cup 1-0 to West Ham. They won the World Cup, so of course they'd beat Arsenal. So and not really.
Just before you move on from 79, mate, the FA Cup in 79 gave me one of the most stressful weeks of my football supporting career, mate, in that we played Sheffield Wednesday in the third round, and what jogged it in my memory was that Jack Charlton was the manager of Sheffield Wednesday, Ferguson. They were in the third division, and we played them up at Hillsborough, and it was snowy in Hillsborough, and the Sheffield Wednesday fans were pelting Pat Jennings with snowballs all the time. But we managed to get a draw, and we brought them back to Highbury, and we thought, well, we're the third division, we're going to batter them at Highbury. But it didn't quite work out that way. They came to Highbury, Big Jack got them playing well, and they drew at Highbury. So then, in them days, obviously, there's no penalties. You just keep playing replays until someone bloody wins it. So
wasn't it 5 at one point?
Well, the second replay, there was 4 replays to this game, to this one, Fergus. There was 5 games in all. No, sorry, there was 5 games in all, right? And the replays, they're playing them at Leicester, right? So I've got my ticket to go to Leicester for the replay, and then the trains go on strike, right? So there's thousands of Arsenal fans trying to get to Leicester. This is another one of them things that stuck in my head. Trying to get to Leicester for this FA Cup replay. Well, we get buses. There's coaches lined up outside Highbury as far as you can see, right? And we're all on the coaches. We're off to Leicester for the second replay. Stay we draw again, right? We draw again. And I've got the page open now so I can look at it. So we've only got one day off, and then we're going to play them again in another replay, right? So, and it's back at bloody Leicester again. And the trains are still on strike. So we have to get the buses again 2 days later up to Leicester, and we're thinking, this is our 4th game against Sheffield Wednesday. They're a 3rd division side. We ain't having none of this. Do you know what happens, Fergus? We draw again. Right? We draw again. And then we have to wait till the following week, 5 days later, for the 4th replay against the 3rd division side, right? And it's at Leicester again. And the bloody trains are still on strike, right? So we have to get the buses again. And I went to every bloody game. How the hell I did it, I do not know. My mum was pulling her hair out because I was like, I was 16, 17, disappearing till all hours of the morning. I worked in a co-op dairy, the Holloway Co-op Dairy in Seven Sisters Road at the time. So I was getting home about 4 in the morning and having to get up for work at like 5:30, 6. And it was, I've never forgiven Jack Charlton for that, although I love the man as a person. God, what a couple of weeks that was, mate. Yeah. We had 5 games, I think we had to beat Sheffield Wednesday, the 3rd division side that season. Just a story worth telling, Fergus. I'm sorry, mate.
No, 100%. I've got a smile on my face. One, at the thought of you getting no sleep and having to go up and down on the buses and everything else, but also just reminiscing of a great memory like that, and that it's now recorded on here that somebody can actually watch it in many years to come. So, as I said, 1980 West Ham.
One more thing about that.
We're not doing 1980, are we at all?
It was a pretty horrendous winter, and there was loads of games. There was loads of FA Cup games being postponed, and somehow our games never got postponed. I don't know if there was a microclimate in Leicester. There's probably still snow on the ground, but these games are still going ahead. And if you look at it, we played 6 in a run of 7 games. 6 of them were in the FA Cup.
Yeah. The pubs in Leicester had a field day that week, Andy.
Imagine.
They couldn't stop the sellers quick enough.
Says the 16-year-old boy who wouldn't have been drinking beer at that stage. So
I was having lemonade shandy, Fergus. Lemonade
shandy, yeah. Bass shandy, wasn't it? Bass shandy.
Yeah,
that's what you had.
Yeah.
We also got to a European Cup Winners' Cup final in 1980, and we lost that on penalties. And that really gets us up to the end of that sort of era. I don't think much happened between 1980 and 86. Unless you guys can... Oh, Mark has got something. Come on,
hang
Mark.
on a minute.
Actually, going back about Terry Neal's best game, it was probably Juventus away.
Yes.
If you think about it, because no English club had ever beaten them there. And we managed... Paul Vasson scored in the last minute. Exactly. It was just astonishing, wasn't it? Really, I mean, I remember listening to on the radio. No one could believe it that we'd beaten them.
So Juventus away was when then, Mark, for us uneducated people in the top left-hand corner?
No, I can't remember.
It was April 1980.
1980.
Yeah, so the end of the
semi-final of the Cup Winners' Cup, just before we got beaten by Valencia on.
But you see, Fergus, you moved on from 1980 too soon, son, and I'm not knocking you for it because, as you said earlier, you're learning about the history here as much as you can. But 1980, we lost the cup final to West Ham, the FA Cup final to West Ham. But we were also knackered for that one because in the semi-final, we played the greatest team in the country, the league champions, 4 times, Fergus. To get through the semi-final in 1980, we had 4 games against Liverpool. and we beat them eventually. And by the time we got to West Ham at Wembley, I reckon we were knackered, and we didn't show up for West Ham.
We didn't show up at all. That was like Ipswich, wasn't it? That game.
The most memorable thing about that game against West Ham at Wembley, really young. They all say it was a bad foul. I thought it was just a clash, to be honest, boys. You know?
I think Alan dived myself.
Yeah, I do. Fergus, watch that on Google it, mate. If you've not seen it, or put it on YouTube. Willie Young's tackle on was it Paul Allen?
Paul Allen, yeah.
Paul Allen in the 1980 FA Cup final. Paul Allen died, and of course, so we've played Leicester. Excuse me, we've played Liverpool 4 times in the semi. Then we've played West Ham in the final of the FA Cup, and we're knackered and we get beat. 4 days later, we're playing Valencia in a Cup Winners' Cup final, and we lose out on penalties. And I found that harder to take than the FA Cup final loss. I don't know about you, boys.
Yes, it's terrible, isn't it? It's terrible. It really was.
And people talk about Graham Ricks taking a bad penalty, which it was, but really, Brady missed his penalty as well, and not many people talk about that. He's the one that should have scored his penalty. He was our penalty taker at the time.
Yeah,
as did Kempers. He missed as well, didn't he?
Yeah. So Saka's in good company.
He is.
Just going back before then, the semi-finals. If you look at April, starting on the 2nd of April, we played 3 league games in a week, and one of them was against Tottenham away. And knowing that we've got to play Juventus in the Cup Winners' Cup semi-final, and then followed by Liverpool. So we played Tottenham on the Monday because it was a bank holiday Monday. Then we played Juventus on the Wednesday, and then Liverpool in the FA Cup semi-final on a Saturday. And Arsenal asked Tottenham to move the game to make it a little bit easier for us, knowing what we got coming up, and they said no. So we stuck out our reserve team, and we beat them at White Hart Lane 2-1 with our reserves putting out a reserve team. But then
it was a dive. He dived.
Sorry, Andy, we cut you off there, mate. Yeah, go on.
Yeah. So in a matter of a couple of 3 weeks, we've played Liverpool 4 times in FA Cup semi-finals, Liverpool away in a league game, and Juventus twice in the Cup Winners' Cup semi-final. And no wonder we were bloody knackered when we came to play West Ham.
Well,
in April that year, we played 10 games. In April that year, we played 10 games in 4 weeks.
And like I say, 6 of them were semi-finals.
Yeah. Wonderful. Yeah, we're not wonderful because we got nowhere at the end of the season, but it's a reflection of how the players were in them days and what they put themselves through for the club.
Oh, yeah.
So, final few sentences then. If you're looking at post the Cup Winners' Cup final loss against Valencia on penalties in 1980, what happens with Arsenal between then and 1986? I assume it's just like the players are just getting old and retire, and we go into like the 80s where 83, people talk about 83 being one of the lowest ebbs of
before then. Pele came to Highbury, mate. Pele was in Highbury in 1981
with Brazil.
Highlight. No.
We were playing Aston Villa,
didn't he?
Was that?
He just came to visit, didn't he?
Yeah, Highbury, wasn't he?
I think he was promoting Atari or someone like that.
Yeah, it was. It was Atari. Yeah. It was. He had a lovely white suit. Come on at the start.
Yeah. You see, the problem with 83 to 86 in particular, Fergus, from my perspective, and I'm going to get shot down here by these boys possibly, is that Don Howe became manager. And Don Howe wasn't a manager. Yeah. Don Howe was one of the greatest coaches that Arsenal and England have ever had. But he couldn't manage, and that's got to be part of it for me, I think, that them low years.
Yeah, he was an obvious number 2, wasn't he? He was a second in command, brilliant coach, but he wasn't a figurehead.
Yeah.
I mean, he proved that when he left Arsenal in 71, he went to West Brom and they got relegated. And, he struggled to be a manager at any club. But for me, the only highlight really between 1980 and 1986 was the signing of Charlie Nicholas in 1983. He had a bit of a struggle at the start, but he liked scoring against Tottenham, which endeared him to the Arsenal fans.
We all like that, yeah.
But he was a proper superstar that came to the club, and he was like a great player in a team, in a fairly average team.
Yeah, it was. And what's happened now, Fergus, is Andy and Mark have taken us through to 86, 87, mate. And that, my friend, is a perfect place to end this podcast, Fergus, because 86, 87 is a great season. It's a great season, and I'll just give you a little bit of a taster for when we talk about 86, 87. Ian Rush never lost a game. Liverpool scored in, Fergus. Liverpool had never lost a game that Ian Rush had scored in. And then came 86, 87, and we should leave it there. What do you reckon, Mark? Andy, leave it there?
Definitely. Yeah, plenty to talk about next time.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you, boys. Thank you, boys.
Thank you.
Fergus, you can finish in a second, mate, because I'm thanking you as well here. This one tonight, right, Andy, Mark, Fergus, although I don't really like you, Fergus, I'm going to thank you here, right? It's my era, my early days of supporting the Arsenal, and I've just loved this hour and 6 minutes has gone like that for me. So thank you to all three of you for having that conversation. Wonderful, wonderful. Loved it.
It's been an absolute pleasure joining you guys. As I said at the beginning of this, and I've said it on the other ones, I've totally... I enjoy it. One, because we're talking to Arsenal and we get on as mates and it's a chat and everything else. But it's just all the stuff that you guys know. Even old man Trev, he knows some absolute rubbish, but he does know some good stuff. If you want to know more of Mark and Andy's stuff, the Arsenal history, telling it like it really was, as I've been corrected several times, and Trev has, by these two very learned gentlemen. Check out their website. They've got several books. Mark, you can be found on Royal Arsenal MRA. And Andy can be found on Gooner_AK. The next one will be 86 to 96. We have a debate on how far past that we go. I am working on them, lads. I am working on them. Because there's so much history, but what becomes the closer you get into more modern times, the impact of social media, the impact of people's opinions, and it just type of blurs people's blinkers, and it gets a little bit harder to talk more specifically about stuff as specific as one of my favorite takeaways was the 40% attendance in Victorian times of Plumstead. I'm still about women. I'm just still blown away about that, and I've been talking about these to some of my friends who are Arsenal fans, and I talked to them about this one that we were recording tonight, and they went, "Oh, I can't wait." As Trevor said, it's his era, and he would have been 20 going in 86. He was 20, so the next one will be when he was on the road. Listen, Trevor's past his bedtime. Get the Ovaltine out, old man. Finger looking good. Mark and Andy, thank you very, very much for joining us. I look forward to speak to you again next week.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Guns and Yellow Ribbons, an Arsenal podcast by Arsenal fans for Arsenal fans. Follow us on Facebook at Guns and Yellow Ribbons and Twitter at Guns and Ribbons. And remember to rate and review us too.